By mid-1971, ECM had a dozen albums under its belt, and the caliber of musicianship was already coming together nicely. A new defined sound of freedom and improvisation was drawing attention, on a small scale, but growing and evolving. Then came Chick Corea. Armando Chick Corea was already well established when he got the invite from Manfred Eicher to record a piano instrumental album at the Bendixen studio in Oslo. Chick had already played with the likes of Stan Getz, Herbie Mann. In 1968, he released his amazing debut album, Tones for Joan's Bones, and then the follow-up album later that same year, Now He Sings, Now He Sobs. Both albums really turned some heads, and by the end of the same year, Chick was on tour with Miles Davis, and the rest is history. So how Manfred Eicher pulled off these early connections with this level of multiple musicians is baffling and quite impressive. Chick agreed, and we ended up with this beautiful work, ECM 14, Piano Improvisations 1, as well as a second album from the same session released a few months later, ECM Album 20, Improvisations 2. The album begins with a stunning intro of Noon Song. And we end side A with Some Time Ago, a song that Chick brings back later in this episode. So good. Improvisations 1 is highly regarded as genre shifting in the perspective of instrumental piano recordings. In fact, I think we could safely say that this album by Chick Corea essentially led the way for Keith Jarrett and the path that led to his monumental success with the Colon Concert. It may have happened without this idea, but Manfred Eicher definitely led the way to put Chick Corea behind a solo piano. And this is a clear example of how ECM and this era of musical exploration changed the entire landscape. So how did Piano Improvisations 1 rate? For me, this has high likability, fairly decent flow, especially side 1, great quality, and it was highly significant to the world of jazz at that time. I would give it a solid 7, and would definitely recommend adding it to your collection. We ended episode 1 with album ECM 12, and we started this episode with Chick Corea album 14. So let's go back briefly to album 13. ECM album 13 is Dave Holland and Derek Bailey's Improvisations for cello and guitar. So I'm not going to say a lot about this album, but I will say we will be seeing a lot more of Dave Holland on very significant ECM albums, such as his collaboration with Gateway. We see him a lot with Kenny Wheeler later in this series. Lots of admiration. But for now, let's catch back up with ECM 15, Jan Garbarek's SART. So this is the same lineup as Afric Pepperbird, however, with the addition of Bobo Stenson, making it now a quintet. The impact of Jan Garbarek on the jazz world was profound. And I know firsthand that his particular style is hard to translate to a generation now 50 years later, but it is a very difficult explanation to a younger audience of how seismic this music was in its time. SART begins with the title track, SART. I love the intro on this. Every sound is a surprise, and it gets bizarre at times. Side B, Song of Space. Both this album and the preceding Afric Pepperbird are almost essential if you're an ECM diehard collector. Jan Garbarek was a landmark for this era and for ECM. This album has many great moments, but it could be a difficult listen for unseasoned listeners, especially if you don't have a real context of that time period and what Manfred Eicher was trying to accomplish. And with that, I need to add, listen to all of this music on the best sound system that you have available to you. It makes a huge difference with this music. It's not mixed or mastered like modern music. It's not made to be listened to on a phone. There's a ton of depth in these recordings, and they really breathe with life. It's the difference between being at the Grand Canyon versus looking at a picture of the Grand Canyon on your phone. Seriously. For a final rating, it's a great album, not one that I want to listen to all the time, but it is very likable amidst its wide, almost manic swings of exploration throughout the album. That does take a toll on the flow for me, but the quality is top shelf, as always. Mr. Flowmeister gives it a 6.5. ECM, Album 16. Terje Rypdal finally steps to the plate and delivers. As we start to see with ECM, Manfred Eicher stays very close and tight to the musicians that he knows and trusts with his time. Again, he's building a musical Middle-earth. So it's not surprising that this is the same cast as the last album, just rearranged. And it includes a few extra peripheral musicians making contributions as well. The Terje Rypdal self-titled album leads off with a 12-minute groove monster of a song. A sparse, tentative, gritty introduction is both totally relaxing and totally invigorating at the same time. It is the best song out of the entire first 16 albums up to this point. The opening track on side 2, Electric Fantasy, a 15-minute song, has a lot of good moments. Lontano 2 is interestingly a continuation of Lontano 1 from Jan Garbarek's SART album that we just listened to. Just a long, moody, drony piece continued into this album. And the final track, Tough Enough, returns to the feel of track 1. It's more of a jam. The drums from Jon Christensen are much more prominent. It does some similar tempo shifts like in track 1. It actually kind of reminds me of Dark Side of the Moon, which came 2 years after this, but which could have easily been influenced by this. In fact, I've seen comparisons on the internet of Rypdal's style to David Gilmour in tone and patience. I would give it overall good likability, moderate flow between songs, excellent quality. So it gets a Flowmeister rating of 7. Now let's move on to ECM Album 17, Keith Jarrett's Facing You. The story of Keith Jarrett is remarkably similar to the story of Chick Corea, and their careers happen almost simultaneously, side by side. It's astonishing. Jarrett was discovered by Art Blakey, and after that met his lifelong friend, drummer Jack DeJohnette, which seemed to be fate. By the late 60s, he had put together his own band with Charlie Hayden and Paul Motian, and recorded Life Between the Exit Signs, his first album, released in April 1968, 1 month after Chick Corea released his first album, Tones for Jones Bones. And by the end of the same year, Jarrett was also invited to play in Miles Davis's band alongside Chick Corea. Then after Chick Corea recorded his piano Improvisations 1 and 2, later the same year, Manfred Eicher invited Keith Jarrett to record a solo piano album. The solo piano concept really resonated with Jarrett, and the next year he set out to do what few people could ever do. He could walk out on stage, no music, no plan. He would sit down and just start playing. There's an interview with him that I saw where he says that he would be just as surprised as the audience because he was also part of the audience. Piano improvisation at its absolute peak. This really caught on and led to the historical success of the Holland concert in 1975. These songs are all just beautiful. It's hard to state a favorite. I would say track 3, Leline, for me is probably my favorite. I love the playfulness of track 6, Starbright. It's an amazing contribution to the music world, and even more so in anticipation of what was to come. I would give this a solid 7, a very good album. It's very comparable to Corea's Piano Improv 1 and 2. And these albums document a foundational time in music history. So after ECM 17, we see Chick Corea return again with his jazz ensemble known as Circle, ECM 18 and 19. Circle is definitely Chick Corea returning to his avant-garde days. Track 2 is Dave Holland giving us a 7-minute bass solo. Duet has some saxophone moments. The whole concert was recorded live in Paris in February of 1971, with Manfred Eicher producing. ECM 20 was Chick Corea's Piano Improvisations 2, which we already mostly covered. This also had many good moments, very comparable obviously to Improvisations 1. I like the early release a little better, but both are good. And then we moved down to ECM 21, Keith Jarrett and Jack DeJohnette. I really like this album. It's very raw. The story goes that Keith and Jack were out in California, and they had some downtime, and a friend offered them some free studio time. So they went in and just jammed around and recorded these tracks. So Kurt Rapp and Manfred Eicher took those tracks a year and a half later and made the best of it. It was released in January of 1973. So imagine you have one day of free studio time, spontaneously, and you have nothing written. Are you going to come up with an album? These guys did, and I think it's pretty cool. Track 1, just listen to it. It's a thing of beauty. Jarrett on the electric piano is nothing short of cool. Definitely the best song of the batch. Track 2 is the title track. Track 3, All We Got. It's two guys jamming in a studio because they got some free studio time. The rest of the album, it's good. It has moments. It's worth checking out. Mr. Flowmeister gives this album a 6. And now we come to the moment, ECM number 22. We started with Chick Corea, and we're ending with Chick Corea, Return to Forever. When Chick Corea entered the jazz world, he quickly rose to prominence. As the decade was turning, he explored the avant-garde, as we saw with his group Circle. But now we see him front and center, leading the way of the jazz fusion movement. Chick put together a band in late 1971, consisting of Stanley Clarke, a 20-year-old bassist from Philly who had recently moved to New York City and had met Stan Getz and Art Blakey. Joe Farrell was on sax and flute, who Chick had recently played with on his album, The Joe Farrell Quartet, and Chick brought in the skills of Airto Moreira on percussion and the cosmic talent of Flora Purim, who had also been singing with Stan Getz. The album came together at A&R Studios in New York City in February of 1972, a 2-day recording session as always, with Manfred Eicher producing. And the recording is nothing short of magical. It was a perfect culmination of the time, like the stars had aligned and surprised us all. Track 1 is otherworldly, as it takes us on a Volkswagen bus tour of the solar system. This song is truly the coolest of the cool. It is the number 10 that we've been waiting for, the rare outlier. Track 2, Crystal Silence, another absolute stunner. Corea is at the wheel and in full control. Track 3 brings us a rare moment with ECM singing, a light and playful song that brings a perfect end to a perfect side A. Side B, Chick Corea brings his piano into the electrosphere. So, likability, flow, quality, significance. This album is the standard, the rare find that stands apart from all the rest, with few exceptions. Return to Forever is the unicorn. ECM's first 100 albums are very exciting because the delivery of quality and the freedom that it fostered among artists naturally gave way to some of the most cutting-edge music ever. How else do you describe so many pivotal albums in such a short time? We're only on album 22. This is a small label for its time, but the unique drive for quality from its leadership, its partners, its musicians, and its listeners placed it in a league of its own, and deservedly so. Basically, Manfred Eicher never lost his groove, and neither should you.